Okay, so with word problems, again, nothing that you haven't done in the past in lots of math classes before. What we're adding again in part of seventh grade is now we have some numbers that are going to be negative and then being able to solve that way. So I wanted to remind you of some of how you know it could be an addition versus a subtraction versus multiplication versus division problem. Now, with the negative and positive numbers, we know that subtraction can turn into addition, right? That's part of our rule. So, really, those two end up interchangeable sometimes. We could write it as a subtraction or an addition as we go through and do our problem. But multiplication and division generally kind of stay their own thing. So, when you're looking for addition, things that you might see would be things like, let me zoom this for you. Um, what is the total, or how many altogether? A lot of times we think of adding as a putting together kind of thing. So you have some and I have some, and what do we have all together? Even when there's negative numbers involved, like I owe some money, I have some money, how can we put that together to see what I have there? Um, so that's going to be kind of your ideas behind that. And then the other kind of big word that you'll see is this word sum. That's the answer to an addition problem. So if it ever asks you to find the sum, that's a pretty good hint that it's going to be an addition problem. For subtraction, we have some different kind of cues that would tell us it's subtraction. So you might see something like how many fewer. So looking to kind of do something with comparing, right? Um, how many are left? What is the difference? And then a lot of times the word compare too is one that you'll see that's a subtraction thing. So a lot of times with subtraction, I think about where like taking things apart, like I'm giving things away, or you're taking something, or I lost something, things like that. Or we're kind of comparing. So I'm this tall and you're this tall. How much taller am I than you, or are you than me? As is usually the case these days. And then the other word that you'll see, goes with the finding the difference between things, right? Is just that the difference is the answer to a subtraction problem. So if it tells you to find the difference, that's what it's talking about there. Okay. Like I said, when we have positives and negatives, subtraction and addition are kind of connected to each other. So just be careful with kind of where you put the positives, where you put the negatives, where you put the add or subtract. And especially when, kind of use some of your strategies that we talked about, either Numberlands or chips, to visualize what your answer is going to be so that you know whether it's going to get bigger or smaller and see if that makes sense for the problem. For multiply and divide, you're going to see things like a lot of times each or every. So, each day I eat 5 cheeseburgers. How many have I eaten after 10 days? Things like that. Every shirt costs this much money. How much do this many shirts cost? So, something like that that's happening there. And then the other big word you're going to see is product. That's the answer to a multiplication problem. So if it asks you to find the product, that's a big hint that it's multiplication. And then division, um, when I think about division, a lot of times you're going to see um, a problem that asks you to share things, right? So, we have a bill that was at the restaurant that was $100 and we are sharing it between 5 friends. How much does everybody have to pay? So those kinds of things there. The other thing that I think about is measuring out. Oops. Measuring out. So this is kind of like if you imagine dealing cards where you say like one for you, 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 kind of a thing. and figure it out there. So those kinds of situations are division ones too. And then the fancy division word for your answer is quotient. 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 So that's another idea that's going to tell you that it's division. And then when you do multiply and division, you're just going to have to look in the problem, figure out the other keywords that tell you if you have negative or positive numbers. So, things like losses and gains and all that good stuff. And then multiply or divide like regular and use your multiply and divide rules to find the sign of the answer. So these would be a good thing to look at to kind of keep in mind or go back to as we start to do some of the word problems so you know which operation to do.